Value Coffee Talk podcast.
Hi, I'm April Morley. I'm co-founder of Genius Drive and the Enterprise Value Collective.
And I'm Tom Pacello, the ROI guy.
This podcast is a service of the Enterprise Value Collective, a community for business value-focused leaders and practitioners, and sponsored by our value consultancy, Genius Drive.
And our mission, besides sharing a good cup of coffee with friends, is to help accelerate and optimize the value articulation in each of your customer engagements and throughout your customer lifecycle. And we do have a friend here with us today. Anurag, welcome.
Thank you, Tom. Thanks for having me here.
Anurag is the global head of value consulting and realization at Red Hat and a 4 times veteran at building out value consulting and advisory teams for the likes of few companies you'll recognize: Salesforce, Adobe, Deloitte Consulting, S&P, and we can go on. Anurag, tell us a little bit about the value program that you're now establishing and running at Red Hat.
Sure. So Red Hat is a well-known name in the open source world. Our history, our lineage was with enterprise Linux. And as the company grew over the years, as our market portfolio evolved, right, there was a need felt about 3 years back, 4 years back, to add a muscle of business value selling to our company's go-to-market operations.
Mm-hmm.
And that is why I was tapped on to start this program for the company. And we've taken the program from nothing at all, from really starting from scratch as the very first hire, the founder of the program, so to speak, at the company, to now a fully fledged function, which is not just sales, even though we sit within sales, but our work spans the entire spectrum of the organization across marketing, product, customer success. Every function has changed the way they go to market using a value approach now. So that's been a hallmark of our vision for the program since day one, was how can we change how a $6 billion company is going to market and put customer value front and center as we do that.
Yeah, wow. It seems like you've really covered like the full value life cycle. That sounds great. And I know that you've been hiring recently. We've seen the opposite trend in the market, where we're seeing layoffs across the board and including value teams. So curious what you're seeing in terms of trends.
Yeah, I'm seeing that as well, and it's unfortunate that some of the value teams have been impacted in organizations. I'm blessed to have had a strong program going here, and we continue to receive sponsorship and investments for the work that we are doing here.
How do you assure that you keep getting those investments and the value programs grow, Anurag? What's your secret sauce to assure that?
Secret sauce. What kind of coffee am I expecting, Tom?
Exactly.
No, I mean it's pretty basic stuff. As value practitioners, we share often, right? So I would say a factor of 3 aspects that have come together for us. Number one was executive sponsorship, top down.
Mm-hmm.
So even before I took the role, I made it very, very made a very deliberate attempt to test for the kind of sponsorship we have in the company. And I was happy with what I was told in the hiring process, and it actually translated into reality. And to supplement the executive support, I mean, I could have a champion in the company, but if I'm not performing, even the champion can't help me.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of that led to actual grind on deals. That was the big focus early on, is to show success bottoms up.
Mm-hmm.
So we were able to do that on deals and show to the company that this works. It's a new way of doing business, but it actually works. Having a technical conversation with a technical user is good, and there's a place and time for it. But there's also very much a requirement for having a business value conversation. So I would say that was the second big factor, is proving success early. And then that adds more fuel to the fire and it's the open source way, right? Once something goes well, it goes viral, and that is the Red Hat culture that we were able to use. So that was number two, and number three, which kind of becomes foundational to those, is the talent that we have on the team. So
Mm-hmm.
again, I was fortunate to get some really strong hires into the team, and it's a privilege to serve them every day. So I'd say the work that they do, I'm just the orchestrator of sorts, right? I'm their biggest cheerleader. So it is the amalgamation of strong support from top down, making sure it works in from an execution perspective, and then
Mm-hmm.
having talent. I think in our function, in our craft, the talent piece is often overlooked,
Mm-hmm.
but I have a firm belief that it is the people who make the function.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. I'd love to dive into the second one you mentioned, which is around, showing success for the program. And, I think when you want to show success, it's all about how you measure it. So, what is your definition of success and how do you communicate that to the organization?
Yeah, it's a good question, April. So we look at it in a couple of different ways. Let's talk about some leading indicators and then some lagging indicators. So leading indicators would be, let's say, field demand and the
Mm-hmm.
kind of requests to support. I'm purely talking about sales now, but our impact, as I said, goes beyond just sales. It goes to other parts of the business as well. Purely from a sales perspective, looking at demand that we get from the field, the kind of traction we're getting with getting to business level users, business owners, right, who we want to get to quickly. And then how does that translate into pipeline generation for us?
Mm-hmm.
So what
Mm-hmm.
are the kind of impact metrics we have on building pipeline for the company as a whole? And then how does that translate into end revenue for us? So, and a big focus for us has always been incremental impact. We just don't want to be yet another person, yet another team who's claiming credit on a
Yeah.
closed deal or on pipeline that's built. Our focus is to show very clearly what is the incremental impact that we are bringing to the table.
Yeah.
That's interesting. I would be curious to dive even more into how. So, incremental impact, I think, is something that a lot of leaders aspire to, but it's difficult to measure. So, how do you approach that?
Yeah, it's a classic attribution problem, right? Marketing attribution at times. That's something that Tom is very, very familiar with. Uh, so for us, we've created mechanisms in our governance process, so to speak, in our deal flow process, where if I'm claiming credit on a particular deal, it's not just me who's talking about it. We have the account executive, we have sales management. We actually ask for, what did you actually create on this deal, and is
Mm-hmm.
there a direct correlation between the value work done on the deal and the deal closing, right? So that has to be really, really simple and clear to understand. So we have built that into our governance process, and that's how we're able to show that incremental impact and try and make it as less of a conversation, but it is something that everybody agrees on, that yes, business value. If we did not have it on this deal, it would have taken much longer. The deal size would not have been the size that it closed. Maybe the deal could not even close without taking a value approach.
That's so interesting. I've seen organizations try to measure it in an automated fashion, looking at what was the pipeline at this date and then what was it at that date. And I've just found that the automation doesn't work that well because it's like you said, you really have to ask the team involved who really understands the deal. Did they clearly project the real value of the deal on said date, or was it something else? So I think that makes a lot of sense, and I love that you incorporate it into the governance process.
Thank you. Yeah, I think it's a mix of art and science. Much like as a value practitioner, our work is a lot of storytelling.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
It's not just the financial analysis, but also the storytelling. So you could say the same even with respect to impact attribution, yes, automation helps, but the insights you get from automation, if you're able to layer on top of it an actual people element, uh, I think that's the cherry on top.
I completely agree. Those anecdotal information on the wins can be as powerful. And then an executive can't say, well, we could have gotten that some other way, which is what we hear a lot of value leaders being faced with. Talk about who the value engineers are and consultants on your team that are the most successful. Like, what is their background? No one's going to school to become a value consultant. So, kind of, what are the factors to how they got there? What's making them so successful? And if this is almost a message to leaders and what they look for, as well as younger people who are like, hey, this sounds like a great career for me as a next step from being a solutions engineer or being a seller, what guidance you could provide to them as well.
Yeah, you actually triggered a thought, Tom. It'll be nice to have a school for value consultants at some point. Yeah, right. Yeah, but in my opinion, the value consultants who do really well kind of combine a couple of different characteristics. Number one, in my opinion, is your ability to work almost as a management consultant, where you have a strong sense of empathy and you're listening and you're understanding the customer's business problem first, because that is the basics of our trade, right? It's not about our technology, it's not about the product, it's about the customer first. So how much are you able to really use that methodology, right, as a management consultant would? And then the second part of that is about the the storytelling, the financial aspects of it, the core value engineering skills. uh, Executive presence becomes important as well in that scenario, right? And then number three will be the appreciation of sales, B2B sales, understanding technology, right? How that translates. I don't need somebody who's going to do code, right? But I do want somebody who's not afraid of technology, but somebody who appreciates technology and quickly can uh, go a couple of levels up from the technical depth and connect the technology to the business level conversation. So the value consultants who've done well have been people who've been able to combine these three, and then also the people skills in terms of relationship building. That's important too, because you got to build a relationship with your customer champions, because you are creating a business case end of the day that they will be using internally, right? So getting them on the same boat with you, and even a step before that, building relationships with internal sellers, because they are your customer number one, right? So a combination of these skills, people who have been able to display these are the ones who have done well.
I love that breakdown, Anurag. I'm curious on career pathing across the organization. I've seen that, maybe sales engineers or customer success managers, AEs, might want to look into value consulting as a potential. What's your perspective on what that path looks like?
Yeah, great question, April. So as I mentioned, one of the success factors for me has been the talent. And I was mindful about diversity on the team. So even the first hires I made, let's say one of them was an ex-value person, right? But everybody else came from a different background, because I wanted to build that strong core, the initial core coming from places of diverse backgrounds. So I had somebody from a procurement background to bring a customer procurement lens to our entire foundations. I hired a former AE who'd been at Red Hat for a number of years to get the tacit knowledge, so to speak, the company history that we require, right? The product knowledge, the basic foundations. So I'd say from a career pathing perspective, April, there are various paths that could lead to a value role. And then you could also flip that a value role is a stepping stone to going out into other paths as well. So in my opinion, especially Tom, you asked about people who are earlier in their careers. I think a value role is almost like a management rotation program,
Mm-hmm.
because you get to experience sales, marketing, different parts of the business, and you can branch out from having done a value role. I've seen very strong value leaders who've gone on to become sales RVPs,
Mm-hmm.
who've gone on to become solutions leaders, right? Uh, a few that are actually now CEOs at companies that we often speak about.
Mm-hmm.
So it is a role that is, I love the role, and I would probably keep doing this for years and years. It is because of these factors that various roles could converge into a value role, and then this could be your springboard to other paths going forward.
Excellent. I'd love to go back to the executive support and kind of take us back to the first dimension of success. Talk about that a little bit, how important it was, how you've got it in the beginning, and then how you've maintained or grown that across the organization.
Yeah, I mean, it's good, in my opinion, to have early sponsorship, especially from people who've maybe seen the program in action before, or who
Mhm.
believe in the value of it, because it becomes an uphill struggle if you don't have an entry point. So that's why I tested for that even in the hiring process, right? And once I saw there's enough here that I will get a fair chance to show success here.
Mhm.
If the program does well, there will be enough people who will be willing to sponsor us. Was what I was testing for. So once I got that initial success internally in the company, getting the wins, I think it became a question of, you've done impact in a particular subset of our business, and we like what you've done. Now, if we want you to replicate this success in other parts of the business, let's say within North America, because we started there, we did well on top 50 accounts. So the question became, you've done well in top 50. What about the next 50? How
Mhm.
do you attach yourselves and have an impact on the next 50? So we took very, very small baby steps, right? It was not as if we went from 1 to 35, the team of the 35 that we are right now. It did
Mhm.
not happen overnight. We were mindful about setting very strong baselines for us in terms of performance, execution, and we let our work speak for itself.
Mhm.
So those were some of the things that helped us get to step 2, which was show our success, but then also spread it across the business, which again helps our sponsors become our amplifiers, and they have enough there, so it becomes an infinite loop. So you find sponsors, you make them successful, and then you kind of branch out from there. That's something we've been doing here.
That's really helpful insight into really how to communicate across the organization and prove success, build a strong team. So thanks for the insights. I'd be curious on your perspective on what the situation where an executive may think they can get by without value. What would be your recommendation?
Yeah, it's a question that comes up, right? So I'd say if an executive is of that opinion that you can get by without value, then it's maybe they've not really experienced the true impact of value, right? So showing them some examples, asking them for a chance to prove success, and really going back to the way in which you are reporting impact. You asked the question earlier, April, on impact measurement. Tracking becomes really critical in these situations. So I'd say drink your own champagne, right, as value practitioners. So whatever you have shown as impact, maybe it's not resonating with the executive. So
Mhm.
just reframe the conversation and let's talk about what does success mean for that executive. Maybe they're coming from a product background. So deal closure really doesn't matter for them.
Mm-hmm.
If they're coming from a product background, let's refine our impact metrics so we are able to show how value can actually amplify their success, right? Let's not think that the traditional value KPIs will be embraced by everybody in the company. I think that is a false assumption to make.
That's really insightful, Anurag, and great advice. What is, if you had to distill everything down to the one piece of advice, what is that you'd like to leave our Enterprise Value Collective with today?
One piece of advice will be, I think, just believe in the power of a value approach. If you have a strong belief in the power of a value approach, doors will open for you. You will find champions, you will find the success criteria, but you personally have to believe that this works and value wins.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining us on the Value Coffee Talk podcast, Anurag.
Thank you, April. Thanks, John. Pleasure being here.
Absolutely blessed to have you, Anurag. Thank you. And thanks everyone for listening. If you haven't done so yet, please sign up for the Enterprise Value Collective. You can do that on LinkedIn or on our geniusdrive.com website to stay in touch on the latest events, tools, and insights. If you like this podcast, hit the like button. Please sign up and subscribe so you get notified on the latest episodes. And until next time, our Enterprise Value Collective, keep sharing and growing together.